Tonight's guest is Chadwick Cooke. Chad, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vic.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for your time. Chad, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Well, there's basically two versions of me. There's the Christian metal version of me that has seen some pretty dark moments, and then there's the Girls' Generation K-pop version of me who's seen some pretty light moments. And I say those two things because I'm really into music, and music has kind of shaped who I am. And that started from military school, actually. And in military school, I talk about military school because I can wake up very quickly. I definitely have some training that if there's noise that I need to be informed of while I'm asleep, I can snap out of whatever crazy dream world I'm in and get in this reality and appear in this reality very quickly. That's just something that I've been able to do for a while. I have always been interested in the supernatural, and I've always kind of pushed it a little bit too far in my supernatural seeking. Like I said, I listen to Christian metal a lot, so I like to test the spirit, so to speak, to where, if somebody tells me that, something scary or demonic is happening, I know that God's on my side, and that whatever frightening things I see, He'll be able to use for His glory. And I've always been able to shrug off any supernatural things that I've experienced, such as things moving off the walls or beings being caught on camera or something. I've always rationalized it. I've always had a very abstract mind, but a very rational mind at the same time. And I haven't had too many experiences that are completely unexplainable, but the Dogman encounter that I experienced is definitely unexplainable, especially since I had never even heard of anything like that. And I've always been interested in writing kind of a science fiction, fantasy, romance novel that is the life I wanted to live, basically, where monsters and stuff are after me or whatever. So I've always looked up a lot of information about different religions and different traditions that talk about the mysterious, I guess. And there's always a part of me that just thought they were stories, and that I can learn something from them and go off and do my own thing. But I've always searched for God, that's for sure. That seeking in my heart has never gone away, so to speak. I just have certain disobediences that are passed down from me from my parents and stuff, and it's hard to navigate being my own person, I guess. That's just kind of my struggle that I've always had. But I think I'm doing all right, and I think I have been doing all right. I have not really had too much luck in the relationship scene in a long time, but that's just kind of because I put God first, really. I've lived on my own most of the time. There was a period in 2014 where I was, I guess, what you would say, having a panic attack. And that panic attack, I knew something was going to happen that day. I knew something was going to happen, but I didn't know what. And I went to my stepmom's house, which was on the way to my house, just to take a little rest, splash some water in my face or whatever. And I stood on top of a couple of stairs and I just kind of took a deep breath and I fainted. And the fainting is definitely what I was worried about happening, is what like I felt happening. I guess like as somebody who didn't have a problem with nerves or didn't have a problem with too much mental health issues, I was always able to just pray and get myself out of any situation. I knew that day was different. And I didn't know what to expect that day. But when I was falling, when I took a deep breath, it just felt like, all right, this is the moment. This is the moment that everything changes. And I fell backwards. I fell straight backwards as if I was doing a trust fall. And I don't know, maybe in my mind, I was like, all right, I want to do a trust fall for God. See if he catches me. And I fell and hit my head on a step above me or behind me. Not, it wasn't above, like it was actually a step below, and it was a wooden step and it wasn't a concrete step. So there was a little bit of leeway there. Like it could have been worse. I fell and hit my occipital bun and it released DMT into my brain. And as somebody who dreams a lot, I deal with my own DMT a lot. Almost every night I have vivid dreams and I see a whole different earth than this one. So my occipital bun definitely is different than others because I just deal with it a lot more. I was a skating car hop at the time, so I had good spatial resonance, and I was a backyard wrestler as a youngster, and I had injured my back in a couple spots, and the doctors didn't really believe I was in as much pain as I was. So I was dealing with a lot of physical and mental anguish because of the pain that I was in at the time. And when I fell and hit my head, it was the closest thing I'd ever had to like a cliche experience, I guess. I saw my body fall. When I fell, it was as if like my soul left the body before I even had the impact. And I could see myself fall hundreds of times. It was like an old 1980s music video or somebody's like falling on a bed or something slowly and there's like an echo to it. And I saw that happen. And then all of a sudden I was seeing something that wasn't there for the first time. It was stronger than a dream and it felt more real than reality. But what happened was I was on a shelf and there's like a pastel rose sheet over the shelf. And I fell off that shelf into the sheet. And in that sheet, I could see all the logos of different companies, of different bands, of different, just all the logos that I've seen throughout my life. And they were cut out of the sheet. And through those logos, I could see the earth as if I was in a plane. It was like daytime. And I was flying over the earth. And still wrapped within this sheet that is reminiscent of the tunnel you see when you're dying. And in my rebellious spirit that I've always had, my curious heart, I guess, I knew I was in that tunnel. I was like, whoa, this is the tunnel that everybody talks about. And everyone always says they're mesmerized by the light. And I refused to look at the light. I was like, wait, if this is my only chance to be in this tunnel, I got to analyze this tunnel. And little did I know that, like, the light was still bringing me towards it. And I had been sucked into the light, and then all of a sudden, it was as if my life was a movie reel that had no pictures on it. And it took me a while to realize that this was the judgment. This was the judgment of, like, well, let's see if you're gonna actually stay dead or if you're gonna live. And at first it was like a horizontal line down the middle of what I saw. There was white on the left and there was black on the right. And then all of a sudden on the left, there became two options of a coin, the two sides of a coin. I was seeing a 2D rendition of a 3D coin. And then on the other side, it was a checkerboard. And in my mind, I was like, oh, okay, so this is the mechanics of a coin flip. It was the two options of a resting coin is on the left. And then on the right, every option of a flipped coin is there. And then I kept thinking, like, oh no, they're going to flip the coin. And I'm going to see whether I'm dead or not, honestly. And the coin got flipped. And then all of a sudden, both sides started switching so super fast. They started switching so fast that it became the two sides of the coin, or the two sides of what I was seeing was being flipped quickly. And it was flipping so quick that it flipped horizontally. And then it was vertical, and then it became horizontal as it flipped. And all I could do was just sit there and, I mean, I wasn't even there. I was like a disembodied, just like idea at the time. I was all I was just the concept of observing, really. And I didn't even feel like me anymore. Like, I had no memories. Like, it was just there. And I kept thinking to myself, oh no. Like, I was kind of like toying with it. I was like, oh no, don't go black. Don't do that. I'm not dead. And I was kind of like just thinking. I was just thinking. And it was like my thoughts were given to God. And God was sitting there with his hand on his chin, thinking and just processing my thoughts. Like, does this guy really want to die or does he not? And then it started getting slower and slower to the point where it was switching exponentially smaller, I guess. Like a smaller time between the flips, is what I should say. And it switched black one last time. And then, boom, flipped white one. And then it flipped white. And I was so relieved. I was like, that's right. It's not time for me yet. And this happened Superbowl weekend of 2014. And once it switched white, I opened my eyes and I was looking upward and I could see a picture of my step grandpa when he was younger. That was the first thing I saw. And I saw it in black and white, and then the color slowly came back, and I could see colors again. I've thought about this a lot since then, and it can only be I see it as like, I didn't see it as my own sin's judgment, but I saw it as the concept of sin altogether. It was as if each checkerboard on the right side was a different word that was created, and each word represents a sin, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how to describe how I've interpreted it entirely yet, because it didn't seem like my own judgment. It just seemed like the concept of judgment just in itself. But when I came to, I really wanted to return back to that place. That's for sure. Like, I really thought, like, oh, all I need to do is hit my head and I can see whatever that was. And I really wanted to do it, but I couldn't speak correctly. I was speaking in gibberish. And I went to like a church at one point that spoke in tongues. Didn't sound like that. It sounded like straight up just gobbledygook. Like, it was like not even words that you could be written down. They were just sounds. And I got sent to the mental hospital and all that stuff. And it took me a long time to recover from that. I couldn't hold down my job anymore at the time. And I couldn't do anything other than like focus on what I knew, which was music. And I went back and like listened to a bunch of music that I missed throughout the years, being a Christian metalhead. Like, I went and listened to a lot of hip hop that I didn't think was appropriate at the time. And then I kind of filled my gaps in the knowledge of just the entertainment industry, of what it wants to present to me through music. And those 3 years were very interesting. Anytime I wanted to say something in a group setting, somebody else said it. Anytime I wanted to, like, I don't know, I perceived the world differently. It was as if an infant's mind was put in a 24-year-old's body. And I was just, with that 23-year-old's knowledge of everything. And I was relearning what it meant to be a human after that. And it was a very interesting time period, especially after I got put on disability, because then I could afford to actually do things in my life for the first time. Well, for the first time in a long time. And I did a lot of traveling. I went to a bunch of WrestleManias. I went to a bunch of concerts. I got to meet a member of Girls' Generation. Like, I actually got to like live dreams that I wanted to live up until then. And it was very nice. It really did feel like heaven on earth when I could afford things. I mean, I guess that's the secret, right? If you have enough money, you can treat the world as if it's heaven. I've definitely learned if you don't have enough money, it can seem like hell, but I've never been afraid of hell because I always knew Jesus died for my chance to go to hell. So I never worried about that, but there was a lot of issues still in my brain at the time. And I snapped out of it once I actually did DMT. And there were, I mean, I could go all stereotypical about what a DMT experience is like, but there were just a couple of things that stood out that I wanted to retain, other than all the weird geometry or whatever. It was that the world is a wheel. Whether it's flat or whether it's curved, it's still a wheel. I don't know what that means, but that's one of the messages I received. Another one I received is that my soul will never leave Earth, that aliens aren't real, and that Girls' Generation will never know who I am. And seeing as how I've met a member of Girls' Generation, and that my soul did leave Earth when I fell and hit my head, and the fact that I've seen a Dogman now, like, kinda all proves that, like, maybe they weren't exactly telling me the truth of whatever it was. But whatever DMT did to my brain, it did snap me out of a lot of delusional thinking that I was having. And it was definitely what I needed, because there for years, I was able to get back to who I know I am. And I did a lot of traveling. I actually went to Korea, and I didn't waste my time, I guess I should say, but I wasted my actions, because I don't have a job, and I want a job, but I only want a job in order to fund my book that I'm going to write about, like, my life. And it was originally going to be like a sci-fi fantasy romance novel or a series, but I don't know if I still want to do that, as opposed to just writing about my life, which is way more interesting. But I can pay attention to a certain set of rules. If there's rules for me that are put in place, I can follow those rules, and I can thrive in whatever rules I'm presented. But positioned my life, because of being on disability, I positioned my life where, like, I could make my own rules, I guess. So I didn't own a TV. I still don't. I didn't own a computer, but I did have a phone, and I love podcasts, and I love listening to podcasts and surfing Instagram and YouTube, of course. But I didn't really pay attention to anything once everything became streaming. I didn't finish a lot of television shows I was going to watch and stuff, but I started to just dive into just real stories from people, like people who've experienced real experiences. And I remember there was a point where SCP kept popping up everywhere. And I kept reading these stories and watching these videos about SCP stuff. And I was like, okay, maybe I've gone a little bit too far now, because this all seems just like made up stuff. And one night I was laying in bed, and my next door neighbor, who was basically the security guard for the area that I live in. I live on the edge of Nakoma Park. I'm sure you can hear cars driving right now. Like, I live right next to the street, right next to a busy intersection. There's a little field across the street where, like, some company has a building. I don't know what that company is, but they have delivery trucks. I know that. And then there's like a little corner store right next to my house. And people walk by all the time. People walk through the yard and stuff. So we had a trailer over here where my friend Eddie was our security guard. And he had passed away in the late winter of 2001, maybe? Or 2021, not 2001. I don't know what I'm saying. And I inherited his cat. And my cat and his cat didn't get along very well. They were kind of territorial. But whenever I would hear him make his little cat screeching noise, I would wake up and I'd run out there and see what's going on. Usually I was breaking up my cat fighting with his. Sometimes I was chasing off raccoons. What else? There's been dogs before. You know, just normal stuff that I wake up to in the middle of the night. But there was one night I woke up and I heard him scream, and I ran out there and I grabbed my glasses. I don't remember how late in the year it was. It must have been winter, because I remember it being just barely cold enough for me not to want to chase it. Whatever this was, or whatever it was that I was going to run into, I was just going to yell until it ran off like normal. But what I saw was something that I did not expect to see. I had not even heard of a Dogman at all. But this could only be described as a Dogman. And it looked like what the pound calls a pit bull. It was taller than I am, maybe about 6.5 feet tall. And it had a pit bull's face, but maybe like disproportionate to its body. Like, it was a little bit bigger than a pit bull proportionally is to its body. And it had brown fur and it had white fur on its chest. It was in the middle of my yard facing the northwest. And I have a little carport that's awkwardly placed in the middle of the front yard. So I could only see it as it was standing there. It didn't look like it was looking at me at all. It didn't look like it was paying attention to me at all. I heard the scream. I ran out, opened the door, stood on my porch, and it had long fingers. It had like a big giant claw that it scooped up my cat Ozzy with. And Ozzy let off a scream. And it ran off past my car, past the carport. It ran off, and it ran off into the darkness to where I couldn't see it. And I thought to myself, I wasn't shocked. I wasn't like surprised. My first thought was, this might as well happen. Because at the time I was in RCIA, so I was becoming Catholic, and I like been a believer in miracles. And so I thought to myself, all right, let's rationalize this. This is something I can't chalk up to a plane flying over and knocking something off the shelf, or a noise from somebody walking down the street singing or something. Like, this isn't something that I can easily explain. So obviously this was something a little bit different than what I've ever experienced. And I mentioned it to a couple people at the time, and they were unbelievers, I guess I should say, which would have been me probably before this encounter. But I found your podcast. I found other podcasts. I found different stories about Dogman. And they had always said stuff like, yeah, werewolves are a legend, but it's not a werewolf. Skinwalkers are a legend, but it's not a skinwalker. And that's kind of the conclusions I had. Like, I was like, well, this isn't really something that I've learned about before. And I stumbled upon a Reddit post, which I'm pretty sure has been deleted now, because I can't find it anymore, about how jinns existed, and that in Muslim culture, cats and dogs are akin to demons, and that dogmen weren't created by Allah. They were here before. And I just started doing all this thinking, like, okay, I was visited by, like, something very ancient. And I don't think it's something that could be explained without there being other people who've experienced this. Like, if I was the only one who've ever experienced this, then I would just forget all about it and I would just move on and I wouldn't tell anybody. But because there's other people who've experienced something like this, it makes me want to share the story. And I didn't know whether I believed in the whole jinn thing or whatever, but the more I do thinking about just ancient cultures and the ancient past and stuff, like, and studying about other beings and stuff, it just makes me excited, honestly. It makes me excited that I have experienced something like this, and that I can actually put a line in the sand, you know what I mean? Like I don't know what miracles to believe in, or what are true or what's not. I know in my heart what I believe, but, like, this is something that I can for sure stick my flag in and say, yeah, I'm a Dogman believer. Like, I know that this exists. Like, I doubt other things exist. I want to believe in other things, but I know that I believe in Dogman. And it makes me go from there. Like, if I start from there and I work backwards to what I actually believe as a Catholic, as a Christian, as someone who believes in Jesus Christ. I may not know everything about him, but I do believe in him. It brings me to the St. Christopher story, where he was a dog-headed person, and he was saved. He was brought into the church. He was an otherworldly monster that helped people across the road or river, and even helped baby Jesus across when he had the weight of the world. And that resonated with me because after I fell and hit my head, the pain in my back was so strong. I would be up at all night crying because I was in so much pain. I'd be up all night crying because, like, I can't speak correctly. I can't think correctly. My back hurts so bad that I feel like a monster. Like, I feel like something isn't right with me, and it wasn't. It wasn't. And I've had back surgery since then, and I'm not in as much pain. A little bit of pain, but not as much. And I just kept thinking about this Dogman and what other beings out there that we don't know, you know? Like what was here before we were here? If Adam and Eve were put in this garden and they were to name all the animals, what animals didn't stay in the garden? What animals ran off to go do their own thing that Adam and Eve didn't know about, you know? And it just makes me wonder if I have all these weird hypotheses about, like, how the Dogmen, when they were here, they created the world in all these fancy architectures that, like, were presented, like, at the World's Fair and all this stuff. And it makes me wonder if they're responsible or if we've created a myth for ourselves in the Dogman. That's another hypothesis I've had that I've taken to the extreme, because a Hollywood movie, Twister 2, was filmed up the road from me recently. And I don't know, maybe the Dogman was Hollywood trying to make its next blockbuster, in that some kid saw a monster that we created. Like, maybe it was just some robot that Hollywood created so that there could be a legend about the Twister 2 and what is it, on IMDb, when it has, like, trivia. Like, maybe Twister 2 will have a trivia. This was filmed right up the street from a Dogman encounter or something. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know exactly what humans are in charge of, and exactly if what they're in charge of was something that I encountered. But since then, I've had you and I've had a Navy recruiter tell me that they believe in Dogman. Ever since then, everything else, I've had people yelling and screaming at me because what I'm saying is BS. But as somebody who's, like, made up stories before a lot, I don't BS about this, because this, if I was BSing about seeing this Dogman, I'd be BSing about the fact that at military school we're supposed to be outside standing at attention in bright hallway light in 5 seconds, you know? Like, I've been trained to react to something like this. And I ran out, stood at attention, and metaphorically, and saw something that only a few people get to see. And I feel very lucky that the supernatural experience that I've always wanted to have has happened. But I don't know why I'm still here. Like, why I'm still at the same house that it happened. I don't know if I'm waiting for him to return or not. But in January of this year, I went to the pound and I saw this dog in the cage. And my first thought was, that dog looks exactly like the Dogman that I encountered. And he's now one of my best friends. I needed him to get along with my cats better, but it makes me feel better having a dog, because I feel like maybe the dogmen were mad at me for being a cat person, and they took one of my cats away so that I can be a dog owner. But that's just kind of how I rationalize it. And I don't know. I've always felt connected to earthlings, just in general, whatever form they may be, whether it's cats, dogs, fish, bugs. Like, there's a lot of times where I won't even like shoo mosquitoes away once they land on my arm. And because I don't shoo them away, they don't bite me. They just rest on me. And I like to think that like I'm somebody who people can rest around. And I don't know if there are aliens or not. I'm sure there are, but I feel like I'm on the side of the inhabitants of this planet, whichever form they may be. I've heard so many other experiences, negative experiences about dogmen, and I don't feel scared when I hear those stories. I feel like sad that humans and dogmen can't interact better. I've had like the safest dogman experience, because at the time, the cat that he took was someone I was worried about. Most of my worry was put into this cat. Like, when the bad winter comes, what am I going to do? Is he going to be able to stay in my house with my other cat? Like, I don't know. Like, it made me depressed. I would sit out there with him in my lap and I would pet him and enjoy his time. But it was a depression that I was feeling. And the dogman took away that cat that was causing me causing my depression. And I've always been one to, quote unquote, dance in misery. But Ozzy and my cat are the dogman. Ozzy and the dogman. That whole situation between the three of us, when I thought this might as well happen, my next thought was, now I don't have to worry about Ozzy anymore. Because if some human was out there taking Ozzy, I would have chased him easily. I would have defended Ozzy. But seeing as I saw a monster, I didn't quite want to go toe-to-toe with it at the time. And if it were to happen now, I would chase it, but I would chase it to interview it or something. But I didn't. I thought the whole experience was an overall positive experience, because I don't have to be depressed about Ozzy anymore. He's in a better place. The burden was lifted, and I was able to move on and get confirmed and truly be closer to God than I've ever felt I was. And it's put me in a position now where, like, my story needs to get out. Like, I can't keep dwelling over my past. I need to focus on the future. And the more I tell people about the Dogman experience, the less they believe. And I just want to get my story out so that people can realize that I'm not alone in my story. Like, and that others have experienced this too. That's pretty much my whole experience. It wasn't as exciting as others. But it definitely was a turning point in my life where it was, all right, you think you're grown and you think you're removed from any supernatural experiences. You think it was all developmental in your brain. Well, let's get you in the most right mind you've been as an adult and send you a supernatural experience you can't ignore and see how well your mental is afterwards. That's what it seemed like it was. But in the end, like, I'm just as curious as I've ever been. And I love that it happened to me, because now I can really believe in things that I should believe in, such as like Eucharistic miracles and people rising from the dead and stuff like that, you know?
Did the Dogman move smoothly as it ran away with Ozzy, or was it jerky in its movements?
It moved very smoothly. It didn't look back. It didn't even acknowledge that I was there. It just ran off. It was very smooth, and I only saw it for a couple of feet, because if my carport wasn't there, I would have been able to see it for a lot more. But all I could see was just maybe about 5 feet of area of it running off, and maybe, I think it only took one step that I saw, really. But it was interesting. It moved very smoothly, and I would have thought it was like a mirage or something. Like, it moved so smoothly that like it could have been a projection, you know. But the fact that my cat is gone means that something happened, and nobody else has brought me an adequate explanation of what it was. I've been told maybe it was just a coyote, but like, it wasn't. I know that for sure. I've seen coyotes. But yeah, I moved very smoothly.
Well, it's about time for us to get out of here, Chad, but before we do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Closing comments. Don't be so quick to dismiss people's experience, because if somebody's coming to you with something that they've had, that means they trust you. Be open to miracles. Those are kind of my closing comments.
Well, thanks so much for sharing them with us, and thanks so much for coming on to tell us about your NDE and your Dogman encounter. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks again so much, and have a great night.